Okay, today we're going to be taking a look at a game that I just played, which I think is a really good example of how you should be playing Braum and the concepts that I think are most important on the champion. It's a really good game to highlight Braum's strengths because we're playing into an Ornn and an Anivia. So we can obviously use E to block Ornl to block Anivia stun on her Q. And we're also playing into another melee support in Alistar. So we're going to have the opportunity to not get just bullied out of lane. This game was really good, but it was by no means perfect. But that's a great example of how even when you're playing Braum really well, there's always going to be amazing amounts of room for improvement. So when you see how well this game goes and what we're able to do this game, keep in mind that this could have been played even much better than it was. And I just think it's a great game after having seen it to go through like the key concepts that you need to be looking out for on Braum that I talk about how to play Braum in the guide. Things that I think really helped me get better at League in general. So level 1, we're just kind of standing here, but I think it's important that the support is the one that goes closest to mid lane. So you know how you have an option of standing in one of two spots if you're in bot lane. I think it's best for the support to stand closest to mid lane because that way if action happens on the top side of the map, you're able to rotate up quicker. So, I was generally saying, if your AD carry stands here, then you should stand and watch Tribrush. And I think that's a good rule of thumb to make sure that you're covering both entrances if someone's not. But I think it's important for the support because they're so strong level 1 and have a lot of CC to be closer to to be able to rotate easier to wherever the action is. So we actually already kind of messed up here, which is our jungler was not leashing, we didn't need to leash our jungler. He wasn't starting bot side. And so what I would have liked to see us do is get into this bush here and then try to cheese their bot lane on the way into lane. This is a really good cheese, and it's kind of like the meta for cheesing right now because you'll always catch them when they come into lane, even if they come through here. Once they get in position to CS, you'll be able to fight them. And if they come through here, you'll also be able to get onto them, and their jungler can't respond. So you can see here, level 1, I'm kind of playing this similar to how I would play versus almost any support champion, which is I was like taking this bush control so that my AD carry can freely CS, and I was walking in and out of the bush to try and bait their AD carry into potentially auto-attacking me and missing CS. We get level 2 first here, but unfortunately, like the way that the minions died, obviously we don't really have any ability to engage on them, and they're playing pretty far back. If you're versus a poke champion, also taking control of this bush and then like hanging towards the back here and then dodging out of the back of the bush when they throw skill shots at you is a really good way to preserve your HP level 1 since you're not really trying to do much in those matchups, and it's really, your first couple of levels is going to come down to how well you're saving your HP. So the first word I like to place, which I've already done here, is kind of briefly after you get level 2. Obviously, you look for a fight level 2 if you have the opportunity to do it, and then if you either can't fight or and end up not fighting, or after you fight them level 2, you should get a ward down in this bush in case their jungler comes. So that's the first ward I usually look for. On the other side of the map as well, I like placing a ward down here where my cursor is right in the middle, whereas obviously most people would just choose to ward either Tribrush or out here in the river, or maybe even here. Warding in the middle like this will give you vision to over here and give you vision not into this Tribrush but right up to the edge of it, and so it's a little bit less effective from each direction in terms of giving you time, but only by a little bit. And it reveals both for one ward, so it's quite a good ward spot here to do in the middle that I don't see a lot of people doing. So one of the things that's going to happen this game is our top laner is going to end up doing really badly. And it'd probably be a good game to go through like what our top laner did wrong as well. But more or less, our top laner is kind of perma-shoving his wave, not really thinking about where the enemy jungler could be or what he's doing with this wave. And it really ends up costing him this game, and it puts him on tilt and puts a lot of pressure on us and the rest of his team to do well. But it goes to show, too, how much you can do from support and AD carry when your team has one player who's doing really bad. You know, obviously, if you play really well, it's possible to carry them, and we did really well this game, so. So obviously, like at this point, because we see all the action going on top, we'd like to fight them, but don't really have a good opportunity to, because Alistar's just so tanky, and generally speaking, whoever engages first in this matchup is actually going to lose. Which we see there, because Alistar goes in for the headbutt combo, and then we just trade a little bit back onto him. And he loses a little bit of HP, but it's not really a big deal for either side of the lane. So look at this. So we've got the wave in, and so now we can potentially look to back, but we're not backing here. I think we saw Udyr cross on this ward. Let's turn on our vision actually too. That'll be easier to see what's going on, what we're thinking. So Udyr came across the Scuttle Crab bot side, and so what I'm worried about at this point is we do think he's on our Raptors, but I'm worried about him wrapping around and then ganking us through Tribrush, through this path, because you know, our wave's kind of pushing into them, and Jinx has kind of been pushing the wave the whole time too. So I drop this ward back here in case Udyr decides to come from Raptors to bot, and kind of play back. Another thing you can do on support is if you don't like that your AD carry's pushing too much, right? Like right here, I don't really like that Jinx is pushing when Udyr could potentially be coming bot. One thing that you can do is what I was doing here, especially because I'm concerned about the gank, but you can play behind your AD carry and intentionally provide less presence in the lane, so that your AD carry doesn't feel comfortable walking up to CS. It's kind of counterintuitive because right in the beginning when we're learning the role, we're learning to provide pressure so that our AD carry can always CS easily, but sometimes you want to put reverse pressure on your AD carry. You want them to feel pressured so that they back up and avoid a gank, and let the wave come in. So there's a lot of like manipulative behavior that you can do as the support to make sure that the wave doesn't get pushed in. I don't want to encourage my AD carry to push the wave in when we're potentially getting ganked. So actually, Zoe ended up going down to like 200 HP in mid, and so it was pretty likely that Udyr was going to go mid, but now at this point that Zoe's backed, Udyr could definitely be coming bot. And I do believe at this point I'm pinging that my trinket's down and Jinx has her trinket up, and that I want her to ward here. We get this vision plant coming across from our jungler, and we're able to clear the ward, and then Jinx is able to get our ward down in the bush. So we're being very respectful, right, of the enemy jungler at every point that they could potentially be. And now it seems more likely, right, that their jungler's top. He took those Raptors an awful long time ago, and was down bot side, so he's probably cleared his camps. So again, talking about like what our top laner is doing, he's kind of like slow pushing this wave into the enemy top laner at a time when he should also be respectful of where the enemy jungler is, because we don't know where he is, and Jace isn't, probably ends up dying to a gank here. And so now that we see Udyr top, again, it's another opportunity where we could potentially fight their bot lane, but our wave's pushed into their turret, so we can't. This is a situation where Jinx and I first disagree on something, which is I really want to stay and pressure their bot lane here, as you can see, because their jungler's top. and our jungler is also doing dragon. So I really feel like we should stay here and continue to keep their bot lane in lane so they can't go to stop our jungler from doing dragon, and kind of do what we can to deny them or punish them for what happened with their jungler going top. So I really don't like that Jinx backed here, but it's fine. So I end up, I don't want to reveal that we're doing dragon, so I don't walk over there right away, but then I end up swinging over here and helping Mordekaiser. And now we're not in a great spot, right? Because since Jinx backed, we didn't pressure their bot lane, and I had to stay to help with the dragon. I have no mana. And their jungler's top again, so in theory we'd like to potentially fight their bot lane here, but I don't have very much mana to do so. Now their jungler's mid. You can kind of see why players complain about the impact of jungle, right? It's because essentially laning phase, like this part of the game, is all about paying attention to where the enemy jungler is. Kind of whiff a Q here, but we actually really don't want to be fighting because Udyr is likely to be here. So Udyr was just mid, and our mid died. And so even this skirmishing up here is actually quite risky. Now probably Udyr, right, wasn't bought quite yet, but it's pretty obvious after the mid play that like Udyr could swing bot if we're fighting them. And so at this point Udyr's here, and obviously like their bot lane kind of potentially gives it away. Oh, Udyr's not here. But we end up fighting them, and one of the big issues with this fight is that I don't have any mana. Otherwise, I could be doing a lot. I have like all of my abilities. So we get quite fortunate that we end up actually winning this 2v2 and double killing them while keeping Jinx alive. But I had very limited mana to do this. Yeah, actually, Udyr went top. But see what I'm talking about is like we shouldn't have skirmished up here because Udyr could have been here. He probably recalled after mid and then went top. So I was saying that, you know, the laning phase, like if you want to really dumb down the game and break it down into its most basic components, the laning phase is all about paying attention to where can the enemy jungler be. And if you don't know where the enemy jungler could be, like if they could come to your lane, then you just can't fight. You can't even like commit to trading with most of your abilities, right? If you're Braum, you're gonna need to save W and E and stuff for in case their jungler comes, and you don't want to be too far up or commit to a trade if you don't know where they are. So what I'm doing when I'm playing League is in the beginning part of the game, in this laning phase, all it is about paying attention to where the jungler is. Now there's a secondary component, which is you have to learn like when you win 2v2, and there's a lot that goes into that. Like when you win a trade 2v2, when you win an all-in 2v2, obviously there's a lot that goes into that. So that when you see the jungler top, you know, oh, we're not strong enough to fight here, so we'll just play it safe even though we know the enemy jungler's top. Or you know, we can fight them 2v2 because the jungler can't respond. So here in this situation, the wave is in the middle of the lane. This is probably a little bit ambitious of me to walk up before we've pushed this. I probably should have stayed back here pushing this. But I get this ward down. And the other thing is we need to be checking these bushes, right? But we don't. And so their bot lane kind of gets a nice vision play here where they cheese us, and Udyr comes at the same time. So there's like all kinds of stuff that went wrong here. It would have been better for me to like stay with Jinx until we've killed that wave. It would have been better for Jinx to just freeze the wave instead of trying to push it. It was not that he could freeze it, it was like stuck in the middle, but instead of hard pushing the wave, he should have just left it basically, since we didn't know what was going on. So there's all kinds of things that could have been done to prevent this, but it's not the end of the world because Jinx just goes down. But we're in a pretty bad spot. I mean, it's not terrible, right? But like, we haven't really found many opportunities. We did get the one double kill, but we haven't found many opportunities. That was kind of fortunate too that even went as well as it did. So we haven't really found many opportunities to do well against their bot lane when Udyr has been top and mid like a lot this game. And so that's pretty unfortunate. And obviously, like, Jace is pretty tilted at this point, and doing pretty poorly. Same with Zoe, although she was less tilted. So I'd say really that I think this game demonstrates this pretty well. You break up the game into two segments. Like the first segment of the game where you're paying attention to where the enemy jungler is and laning, and you're using the knowledge that you have on where the enemy jungler is in order to manipulate like the waves and then find timings where you can fight 2v2. So we get a plate and back here. Udyr showed top, but he showed top like right after I backed. So that's kind of unfortunate, because here's another opportunity where maybe we see Udyr top and we would have liked to potentially pressure bot. I was pretty low mana though, so we get the wave in and get our reset, which is fine. And then the second part of the game where you're basically just moving from objective spawn timer to objective spawn timer, warding so that your team has good information, and then like protecting your person who's pushed up too far, essentially like shielding them or hovering them for in case they get picked, and trying to pick the person on the enemy team who's too far up as well. So we don't have a lot of info, so we're probably going to be boarding again, and it looks like they could be trying to do dragon. But it's going to take them a little bit, right? Because we did see Udyr top, so he's probably right about starting the dragon now. He's getting burned down pretty quickly. Mordekaiser gets in here and steals it. I'm a little bit slow on this, to be honest. Okay, we might need to slow this down and pay attention to what happens here. So Anivia throws her Q, her stun, and we end up blocking it with E. And that's a lot of what this game is going to be about. You know, I end up with the double KS here, and also using ult a little bit later. So there's some improvement that could be made here, right? Like, obviously we want the kills to potentially go over to Jinx. And if I would have ulted Anivia and knocked her up before she was egged, obviously knocking up her egg isn't going to do anything. But if I had knocked her up before, then maybe Jinx would have taken one less auto from Anivia or something and been able to get on those, the honey fruit. But basically what this is going to come down to is the most important thing that I learned that really helped me improve from being like a plat, low diamond player to being a master player is don't just throw your abilities when you're going to hit somebody with them, you know, to cycle them on cooldown. It's hold your ability until the ideal time to use the ability. And so a game like this is easy to demonstrate that because it's very clear that Braum during these team fights should not just be throwing up E to block some Kai'Sa auto attacks, or because we feel pressured during the middle of the fight, or because Udyr is going to hit me or something like that. I need to be saving E and holding it for when Anivia throws her stun, since I can block it and then we don't get CC'd by it, or for when Ornn goes to ult. And so that's what we're looking for. So there's another point here where basically Jinx and I kind of disagree on the situation, I guess, which is I go to ward for Rift Herald, which is coming up very soon, and Jinx walks bot to defend this very low turret with basically no information on where Udyr is. And so unfortunately Jinx just can't walk up here. We're going to see something amazing happen, but she still shouldn't walk up here without me. And so I guess the question is whether I should have just not warded Rift and not played around this side of the map, which I didn't get anything off of, and whether I should have just walked back with Jinx, or whether Jinx should have just really given this turret and played the Rift with our team. You know, it's kind of hard to say. Either would have been good. Luckily, it worked out either way, but we didn't really find much of an opportunity mid, and we didn't immediately start doing the Rift either, because I know Jinx is in a lot of trouble here, so I start walking straight down to her mid. So she ends up actually getting the outplay and killing Eater, and then killing Kaisa with the turret. It looks like she's going to run down Alistar, and then it looks like he's out, but she tags him with a Fog of War zap, and then hits the ult while he's midair, about to combo her. Hits the ult, and then auto while she's midair. So it's quite good stuff. So I see Ornn's looking at coming down here. So I just kind of put myself between Ornn and Jinx in case, you know, Ornn goes to ult here. I can E backwards and take his ult out. Oh, his ult's actually on cooldown a little bit here, but this, you know, I don't know that. So the same principle applies. So we get back, and our team actually ends up taking the Rift while that's going on bot. So, like, my movement there ends up being kind of useless, right? Essentially, I run top, I drop the 4 wards around Rift, or the 3 wards around Rift. I go mid, and we don't accomplish anything. Jinx outplays the dive by herself, and then I walk down. Only thing that I really did in that whole, like, 2-minute sequence was make sure that Jinx was able to walk out against Ornn. That's really all I did there. So that, you know, it's not ideal. But again, I think we could have probably just played for fine. And so at this point, I mean, we can see that like Jinx and I are doing very well. Oh yeah, he already ulted. But obviously, our Jace is very tilted and doing quite poorly at this point. We're going to get a nice tag onto Kaisa here. My ult actually ends up missing, but I have Radiant Virtue going to heal us up, and this is kind of a nice slow field because Udyr and Ornn are walking into it. We just peel the Jinx, play kind of back, and chase him down. So nothing special about that fight. Like again, would have been nice if I hit my ult on Ornn. Right here, we're worried that Anivia is going to throw stun, end up jumping in and blocking it when Zoe goes in like that. I was mostly worried about staying in front of Jinx to protect him from the stun, but when Zoe went in with ult like that, I wanted to get in front of Zoe, so I used W to get in front of Zoe and block the Anivia stun. Essentially what you should be doing is, even if it seems hard to get the timing down, right, to block Ornn and to block Anivia Q and all these other things, and depending on the ability, right, it's going to be even harder. What you should do is while you're in champion select and while you're in loading screen, think about the champions that you're playing against and imagine what the best ability that you could possibly block with Braum E would be. And so if that's like an Ornn ult or an Anivia stun, and those are obviously the two best for this game, don't just use your E in a fight, like I said, when you feel pressured or to block a little bit of damage. Hold your E for that moment when you're going to see that ability come out. Like, play reactionary and block what you want to block instead of just throwing up E on cooldown and hoping you block something important. So, you know, another fight's going to break out here at Dragon. A lot of people, I think, would jump in here and try to help the Mordekaiser. And I throw the ult down in the Q for him, but I stay back to heal Jinx and block the Ornn ult, and now we can go in because the Ornn ult has been blocked. Now we can go in and help. You see we're staying in front of Jinx here in case Anivia stuns. She doesn't throw it, probably just because he's concerned about me blocking, to be honest. And then right when she respawns, it's really hard to see because it's very short, but I actually block another Anivia E right when she respawns, and so it's just classic Braum gameplay. If I had hit Q onto Alistar here, it's kind of tough because he can walk either up or down, but I was holding it. I was kind of doing the right thing. Hold Q, wait until he chooses one path or another, and then throw it at him. So I just brain lagged a little bit and didn't end up hitting him, but had I hit him with Q here, you know, Jinx probably would have been able to kill Alistar. So again, lots of stuff, you know, between like missed ults and like some miscommunication in like laning phase, what we wanted to do with the wave, and where I'm walking top on the Rift Herald spawn that one time. Like there's a few things that could really be improved on, but it's going quite well. And so even though our Jace is 1-8-1, you know, we're kind of just hard carrying the game at this point. So yeah, just when you get into loading screen, ask yourself what the best possible ability to block with Braumi is, and then look for that during a fight. It tells you how to play the team fight, because it tells you, you know, it can be hard sometimes when there's 5 champions and maybe the fight's split and they're all over the place. You know, who do I pay attention to? What do I even look at during the team fight? And this will tell you. It tells you like, oh, I should be watching Ornn and I should be watching Anivia to see when they go to use those abilities. So it tells you what you should be looking at during a team fight, and how to best use your abilities. Cooldown reduction, right, or ability haste is kind of overrated for this very reason. If you're playing the type of champion, it depends on the champion, right? If you're playing a champion that wants to just spam their abilities for damage, like let's say a Ziggs or something like that, where you're just throwing Q and you want it to be up over and over again, sure, like ability haste is a really good stat. If you're playing Braum and you're going to be using your abilities as a reactionary response, having ability haste isn't that great. So here I try to zone their jungler so that it's not 50-50. He actually backs up off of me, which was really interesting. With the Q there, but then get a nice flash hold on Kaisa. Now Alistar here end up getting out. Keeping the Anivia away, and then there's a little bit too much heat, so end up taking the W out over the wall here. So just work on those couple of things. It's like in lane, don't just randomly fight. Pay attention to where the enemy jungler is. You know, one of the big problems that I see people complaining about, even decent players mechanically in like plat and diamond or low diamond, is that you know, they'll complain about jungle diff every game because they don't know how to play around the enemy jungler. Because if the enemy jungler comes to their lane 10 times, they don't see that as an opportunity to waste the enemy jungler's time and to give their lanes on the other side of the map, like their bot lane, an opportunity to fight and carry the game. And so they don't know how to play weak side, basically. So if you're getting camped and you can avoid dying or avoid losing anything, you know, on a bunch of those ganks, it's going to be really big. So you basically just minimize the impact of the enemy jungler by wasting their time, making their ganks ineffective, making their pathing ineffective. So here we get another block on the Anivia stun with another ult. But again, the path here on the slow field ends up being really good. My redemption too. End up kind of shutting Kai'Sa's ability down. And then Anivia throws stun here, but because she hasn't reactivated it, because she egged, it just flies right past us. My E wasn't up there anymore though, so I couldn't have blocked that one. But and then they just surrender. So, right, this game, our top laner went 2-10-1, played really poorly around getting camped. His wave management was not good, etc., etc. And yet we were able to win the game. Let's see how his lane goes so poorly too, by the way. But yeah, as far as how to play Braum, 100% gonna come down to like lane well by paying attention to where the enemy jungler is, so that you don't just fight and die when the enemy jungler's there. You know, so that you're actually playing like what I would call, like, you're playing your jungle priority correctly. And then saving your E in team fights for the most important abilities that you can possibly block with it. So this game was a really great Braum game because I rarely used E to block anything that wasn't an Ornal or an Anivia stun, and that's really great. Let's go back a little bit further here and see what happens with this lane.
Minions have spawned.
So he has to leash for our jungler, but he's playing Jace versus Ornn. So he actually should be able to really deny the Ornn CS. So he's already, like, I mean, I don't mean to get too much into detail. The main focus of the video was Braum, but I think there's a lot that can be learned in the same vein about avoiding the enemy jungler from watching what our top laner did this game. He's already kind of messing up, in my opinion, but this is more of a small detail. See how when he comes into lane, instead of standing up here, he stands like back here behind his minions. This isn't really how you want to play level 1 on Jace. I don't really know why he's playing so far back in this lane, right? You want to zone Ornn off of the minions. Now, I get that he doesn't know where Ornn is, but the worst thing that can possibly happen to him here, right, is that he gets hit by the Ornn Q. So I'd like to see him actually come take control of the lane and not allow Ornn to do this. So here, this is good. So now he's walking up, he's forced Ornn out of the bush. So this is good, but we could have been doing this from the beginning, but that's fine. So this is okay, but obviously our minion wave now, because we hit the minions a bunch first and then zoned Ornn off. I mean, this is how it's going to go with Jace, but our minion wave is obviously pushing away from us. So what we should be thinking as Jace is obviously this is the way it's going to go. Or ironically here, he's literally laning against a player named Wave Management, okay? So we've got to make sure that we get wave 3. This would be the first cannon minion wave. We've got to get wave 3 into the top lane turret and then back. That would be a cheater recall to avoid getting like level 3 ganked by the enemy jungler here. So the problem is that he needs to be hard pushing this wave, and he's just not doing that. Like here, he last hits, he's not switching forms and clearing the wave. He's still focused on zoning Ornn off of the minions a little bit, but it's weird because rather than constantly maintaining this pushing Ornn off of the minions, he's kind of fading in and out between doing it, and he's not even winning the trades that hard. So at this point, it's really doomed because he's just not clearing this wave very fast. Like here, he could have blasted all the minions. He had plenty of time to get this. And so now, unfortunately, the wave actually might be mostly in. And he does go for the ward here. So he can either back here or get the ward down. So he gets the ward down, so that's not terrible. But the minion wave is in, right? So Jace could have easily just backed here. So now the problem is, sure, we have this ward, but we're playing up at the tier 2 top turret. So maybe Ornn comes around. Okay, so here's the problem, right? Jace is so far up that Ornn is actually, or Udyr is actually able to just walk through Tribrush straight through the ward. I mean, we can go back and take a look at this. Obviously, he gets comboed by Ornn. I'm trying to see, like, the second he should have backed up here. Like, did he just stay up too long, or was he up too far in the first place? So, like, he sees Udyr here, so he should start running backwards here. But instead, he actually takes a step forward, doesn't instantly see it, lets Ornn hit him with a Q, and then gets knocked up here by Ornn. I even think, like, Ornn can probably do a whole lot to Jace here, even if his jungler wasn't here. Like, this trade might actually work for Ornn. But Ornn plays it really safe, which is smart, and just lets Udyr run at the Jace. I think Jace ends up actually getting to mid here and getting out, but the point still stands. Like, essentially, rather than just getting that third wave in, he opted to get a little tiny bit of extra meaningless poke onto Ornn. Barely managed to get the wave in anyways, just in time, and then instead of backing and fading the gank, just decides to stay in top lane. Even though we know their bot lane leashed, and that our jungler's not pathing to help us, but pathing away from us, we should expect this gank. He wards like he expects this gank. He doesn't react, like his mini-map awareness isn't even that good because his reaction to the ward that he placed wasn't even that good. But here's the problem. He's so far up that this ward doesn't actually help him. Regardless of whether he steps forward here or walks backwards here, even if Jace tried to run away, he's got so far to run and Udyr can catch him so easily. He's going to be in a really bad spot. So he's burned Flash and then waste a bunch of time running all the way to mid to try to get back. Even here, like walking back at the enemy jungler for no reason when really he needs to be getting back and going to his wave. And he's quite fortunate, actually, that his wave is pushing back into him. Although not anymore. He got bad minion RNG. So now the minion wave is actually pushing into Ornn. And you can see Ornn is freezing and taking full advantage of that. Jace still hasn't backed for some reason, and now he's gone to fight the enemy jungle. They do end up actually collapsing on him and getting a kill. So like Jace should just back here. But again, he's wasting a lot of time. Well, they're gonna try to go gank top. I think Mordekaiser should have probably walked around with Jace. And this is a pretty big minion wave to be fighting Ornn. Yeah, and so Jace isn't really able to collapse on Ornn. He just has to back up. So Jace, right, obviously should have backed like 3 times. Oof. And Jace tells the jungler not to push that, obviously. He's canceled his back again. So it's just really poor management here to somehow still be stuck in this lane after blowing his flash and running mid. And the worst part about this whole thing is not only has he had stopped his back like 4 or 5 times, but this is all time when Jace is supposed to be bullying Ornn out of lane and getting a CS advantage. This is like, Ornn is going to get stronger than Jace later on into this game. And so Jace needs to get an advantage early in order for his champion to be as good as Ornn later on. But he's at no advantage right now. Jace needs to back. He's stuck under his turret with no HP. And Ornn's about to crash this big minion wave on him to deny him the CS. Although his TP is just coming back up. So we'll probably TP back for this. So we'll see after he collects this. He'll actually probably be up a little bit in CS after he gets this. But so far, not so good. Poor wave management from the beginning, and just like fumbling the recall timer over and over again. We see Ornn mid here, and he's walking towards bot. I think this is maybe the point where he went to our Raptors or something. Or maybe not. Maybe that was later, because our Raptors aren't up here. But because Ornn got to crash the minion wave, now the minion wave is pushing back into Ornn. Although it looks like Jace is going to be fine because Udyr will walk towards bot side. So it looks like he's okay here for a little bit. So he's like slow pushing the wave back into Ornn. And now he's really backing up pretty far. And ceding a lot of pressure and priority in the lane to Ornn. It's really weird. It's like he keeps going back and forth between like trying to pressure the Ornn, like he knows that Jace probably should. Maybe he's filled. Doesn't look like he has a skin for Jace, so maybe he's filled. Yeah, so I was going to talk about this, but I wasn't quite sure. So there's a discussion to be had here about when he's slow pushing the wave, whether it's a good idea to slow push the wave or not. So I was going to say when Ornn was not in lane here, like hindsight's 2020. So I didn't know what the correct thing to do was. But then again, I'm not a top laner. It's not my job. But you can either slow push this wave or like really hard shove it into the turret. And part of the reason why you might want to slow push it is so that you build a big wave into the tower and crash that big wave into the tower all at once. But you'd really want to do that in the case that you want to like dive the enemy top laner, or you want to stay and hit the turret a bunch. I don't, or provide safety to you. Like if Udyr was going to come on this next wave, like if Udyr was going to come in like 10, 15 seconds, where the wave is obviously pushing, you probably want to slow push it instead of fast pushing it so that you have more of your minions building up to protect yourself against a gank. Here, we know Udyr was bought, and so now is the time to get the wave into turret, because Udyr's in the middle of rotating upwards top, right? Like Udyr backed. We don't know, this is kind of hindsight. We don't know this 100%, but just the basic timing is that like Udyr's, and we can see obviously the on my way pings, which prompted that, but slow pushing it here means that he didn't get the wave in. Whereas if he had hard pushed it, he would have just gotten the wave in and then not died to this gank. So basically, when he saw Udyr bot, he in order to slow push like this, he's assuming that Udyr is going to stay bot. And Udyr didn't end up staying bot for that long. He ended up backing and coming top. Ornn wasn't even in the lane, and didn't have teleport, so there's no reason why Jace couldn't have just hard shoved this wave back here into the turret. It's a little bit of hindsight for sure, but it's the wave before this one, where he's just sitting here last hitting, and Ornn's still back on his way to lane. If he just shoved this, he avoids the gank completely. And Ornn gets the wave in, so now this wave is going to bounce back into Ornn. Okay, so Jace pops a ward down here, but this ward doesn't really make sense, right? Because Jace is not currently in a position where he can get ganked, right? The wave's actually very much on his side. Now it's about to push onto his side. So in a wave here in 10, 20, 30 seconds here, he's going to need a ward here, or here or something, or in the middle here. But wasting your ward early here when you're clearly not getting ganked right now is it just a waste of the ward. Ornn ends up coming out and clearing it anyways. And then he actually walks up to fight to defend the ward, and then ends up dying to a gank. When the wave was not in a position where he can ever die there, right? Like, he should have just been sitting back here CSing and he would have been fine. And so now he's losing another wave to the turret. There's just no reason, like once Ornn throws the control ward down here and clears his ward, there's just nothing you can do as Jace. You should just be freezing the wave. You can't walk up here and fight the one. So that doesn't make sense. He just walked up too far away. So he's losing wave after wave. And now again, a champion that should be bullying Ornn and getting a big CS lead, right, is actually losing in CS to Ornn, and 0-2.
Shut down.
Not good. Jace ends up shoving a mid wave. Coming back top. Oh, goodness. Let's go back and see what he does here. Can you get a kill mid too? No, they're already dead. Oh, maybe he does get a kill here. Yeah, maybe he just EQs her. Yeah, he does. So he ends up picking up a really nice kill here on Anivia mid, actually. And does the right thing here and shoves mid wave so that it goes into the mid turret. Same concept as we're talking about. So that, Anivia's losing this, yes. And so that it doesn't build a freeze for Anivia. I just think that considering the position that he's in, right, you can even see he's just EQing into fog to check for Udyr. And even on top of that, if you look at the minion wave, the minion wave's actually probably pushing into him here. So there's no reason why Udyr can't just walk back here and hit the wave back here. This is really forced to walk through here, even just against Ornn. And you know this is control warded too. And then their jungler ends up being there, so he has to burn his flash to get out of that because he took a greedy path back into lane. And why did he take a greedy path to get back into lane? Had he just walked around, he would have been able to CS safely from here again. Oh, so this is really bad. Then he shock blasts the minion. So now his wave's pushing. And Udyr, who just burned his flash, is still up here. So I imagine Udyr will just come around and kill him. Again, he's got the wave in here. I imagine he's just trolling at this point and tilted. But he's got the wave in here, so he could have just backed there too. It's fortunate that he hasn't already died to Udyr. But now that he's choosing to stay and push yet another wave and jump in, I mean, he's just going to die to Udyr 100%. If not, just die in the 1v1 to Ornn. Looks like maybe Udyr is not here, but he's just dead to Ornn. I mean, like if Udyr had stuck around after Jace's flash got blown, Udyr could have wrapped around and potentially been here like 3 times and killed him. So, not good. The wave goes in again. Our jungler actually picks it up this time. Hold on, I need to see the wave state. So it is pushing away from Jace, which we would expect to, since Ornn got it into the turret. So Jace is going to need to probably hard shove this. Udyr's bot. So, I mean, he's not going to get ganked by Udyr, but his wave is pushing into Ornn, and he's very weak compared to Ornn right now. So, like, see, he hard shoves it now that Ornn's back in the lane, but why not hard shove it before Ornn was here? Why did he wait? And now Ornn's just running him down. I actually think Ornn should have probably fought him here. What Ornn's probably thinking maybe is that he doesn't want to lose this CS, and he actually wants to potentially hold the freeze. The freeze might have actually just been... Oh, no, Ornn breaks away. I don't think Ornn should have done this. I think Ornn probably likes this freeze back here, and should have held it. But on the other hand, you know, Jace is just going to keep pushing it into him for no reason, because Jace is misplaying. And so Ornn can kind of get away with breaking the freeze and not holding it. And here we go. Jace is just hard shoving again, doesn't get the wave in, and then just dies to Udyr. Very, very free. So the problem is that, like, players like this Jace, obviously he's very tilted at this point and probably not thinking about what he should be doing with the wave or playing the game well or anything like that. He's pinging on the way into enemy fountain and stuff. This player is probably pretty decent mechanically, and maybe he's filled, who knows. But a player like this is good mechanically, but doesn't have the awareness of what to do with their wave. And so if you have a top laner that's able to get to, like, this is like a D1, D2 game. If you have a top laner that's able to get to D1 or D2 with this little, and maybe this was a bad game for him, maybe he wasn't thinking about it or was distracted or it was filled and he's not actually a top laner. But top laners who do main top do this sometimes. If you're not able to understand what to do with the waves, that must mean, to his credit, that he's very, very good mechanically. Like, he wins a lot of 1v1s, probably very good mechanically, in order to get into this rank in the first place, despite not knowing this stuff. So, if this guy were to... I see sometimes AD carries or top laners or whoever who don't know this wave management stuff, and who don't know how to play around the enemy jungler, and if they learned what to do with these waves and how to not get killed over and over again by the enemy jungler, they would be like really good, like grandmaster challenger top laners or AD carriers or mid laners or whatever, if they just knew how to do this stuff with the wave. Because it's amazing that somebody who's so bad at managing the waves like this, I don't even have, like, I'm support, right? Like, I don't even yeah, supports actually do manage minion waves. Obviously, we help decide when to push or not bot lane. But technically, supports don't really have, like, control over managing waves. The decision should kind of be up to the AD carry, and obviously you're not last hitting, and you are at the whim of your AD carry as far as pushing the wave more than your AD carry is at the whim of you when it comes to pushing the wave. You can control it though on support, but like we talked about, you can provide pressure if you want your AD carry to push. You can take pressure, or you can let the enemy team pressure your AD carry so that you get pushed back. If you're a Targon support, you can obviously like make or break taking a cannon minion and ending up pushing a wave or not, which can change the next couple of waves after that. So I'm not saying that support doesn't have control, but point being, top laners especially, right, solo laners should understand this the best. And so for a solo laner to be playing while clearly not understanding this, you have to be so good in other areas that if this guy understood how to control waves well, really like would be a great player. And it's sad because it's such an easy thing to fix. I mean, clearly the guy's tilted out of his mind at this point, so I don't think there's a lot to get out of it at this point. But that's basically how this guy got into such a bad position in the first place. I do want to look up really quickly, see if the guy's filled. Yeah, the sad thing is that he's actually not filled. We can take a look at that here. You can see that he doesn't play a lot, but he was Diamond 3 the previous 2 seasons, and he's sitting at Platinum 1 right now at 20 games, played 11 and 9, and he basically plays. He hasn't played much this season, but he plays like Akali, Jace. He's doing poorly in pretty much all of his games on Jace, to be honest. So I don't know if he played that last season.
Blue team's turret has been destroyed.
Was this Graves top or was this jungle? I don't really know. But anyways, you get the idea. Like, clearly the guy is not a bad player. He's playing some of these champions quite proficiently. And I just think that if he understood the wave stuff better, this is the kind of thing that would take this guy from being D3, D3, D3 to being like a Masters player. But I hope that the Braum stuff was helpful too. Thank you guys for watching. Just remember, on Braum or any other champion, that when you're in laning phase, you should be paying attention to when the enemy jungler can come and it can't come. When you have information on where the enemy jungler is or isn't, if you can fight them 2v2 when you see the enemy jungler on the other side of the map, fight. Don't coin flip your games. Too many people coin flip their games and go in and fight when they don't know where people are. So, peace out.